It is. Yes, it is. Okay, welcome to Talk Pack, everybody, and our wonderful show sponsored this morning by Kootenai Creek Village, the maintenance-free active adult community in Stevensville, where they offer the best of Western Montana living. Give them a call, 777-5387. The Mustard Seed Asian Cafe, located in Southgate Mall. Dig It Excavating, where they bring 30 years of excellence to every job. The number to call there, 214-4292. And by Transport Equipment, your headquarters for RV service maintenance and repair. They also do a splendid job repairing service vehicles. Located on Inspiration Drive, call 541-9097. Oops. Did you get me there, John? Sorry about that.
Oh,
I didn't realize the old shutter was about to fall when I was... Anyway. Well, welcome, everybody. It is Talkback. And sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men sometimes go awry. We're supposed to have Dr. Joel Wallach, the author of Dead Doctors Don't Lie, a very popular guest on our show. And he always takes calls from folks, say, what's ailing you? Well, here's what you can do, that sort of thing that, are maybe more natural sort of, remedies that you may not have thought of. So anyway, but hopefully he'll be here. We haven't heard from him on the phone. He's usually here in the studio. We don't know where he is.
Luckily, we're an open phones program.
That's right.
You know what made me sick this week, though?
What?
Speaking of.
Clever lead-in, John.
Yeah, okay.
What is it?
So there's a soundbite from Donald Trump on the stump that I want you to play. And it's called Trump on his vow, basically, or Trump on his he signed this agreement with the Republican Party.
Right.
It should be in the queue there.
Okay. Donald Trump pledge. Here it is.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what you want us to hear.
This is what I'd like you to listen to.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are Donald Trump supporters.
Maybe you'll be as sick as me by the time this is done.
So here we go.
And you saw it the other night during the debate. I did well in the debate. A lot of people said I won that debate. But when I walked in, it was like my wife was clapping, my kids were clapping. But the whole room was made up of special interests and donors, which is a disgrace from the RNC. The RNC better get its act together. Because, I signed a pledge, but the pledge isn't being honored by them. I signed a pledge. The pledge isn't being honored by the RNC because those tickets were all special interest people. The RNC does a terrible job. And just remember what I said. Remember in this room. I signed a pledge, but it's a double-edged pledge. And as far as I'm concerned, they're in default of their pledge.
Okay. I'm going to read this double-edged pledge to you.
Okay, please do.
By the way, you can find the actual pledge and pictures of Donald Trump signing it and holding it up and smiling.
Right.
He signed it in big with a crayon, I believe, actually.
Wasn't that during the very first debate?
It was right before the first debate.
Okay, all right. Okay.
And they were considering not letting him run if he didn't promise to.
Ladies and gentlemen, John King. Sorry.
I, Donald Trump, affirm that if I do not win the 2016 Republican nomination for President of the United States, I will endorse the 2016 Republican presidential nominee, regardless of who it is.
Ooh.
I further pledge that I will not seek to run as an independent or a write-in candidate, nor will I seek or accept the nomination for president of any other party, end quote. Now, you can hear all of the responsibilities that this pledge affords to the GOP to be fair and kind to Donald Trump, right?
Yeah, well, I was trying to imagine all the caveats that are included in that very cleverly worded statement by the Republicans that forced him, obviously, when he maybe wasn't feeling well, and maybe he didn't have dinner and his blood sugars were low, or something like that forced him to sign that, and he didn't really know what he was doing, and so now he can back out of it.
Yeah, the only pronoun in here, I believe, is the word I. So have a bit of a stretch making that argument.
Okay, anyway.
But
anyway, he may have had low blood sugar. I don't know. Maybe he had a long night or a difficult commute, or who knows what it could have been.
But anyway, if he goes through with this shenanigan,
right,
which the whole thing's been a shenanigan as far as I'm concerned. But if he goes through with this and decides to run third party if he loses the nomination of the Republican Party, we have a weird situation in America.
Okay.
We could have 4 fairly viable candidates for president. Michael Bloomberg, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders / Hillary, whoever makes it out of this alive, and whoever the Republicans pick that's not Trump. All right? That's 4 people. The last time that I can think of that we had 4 candidates was when Abraham Lincoln won, and you know what happened after that?
Yeah. It was not a happy outcome. No. Yeah, the Civil War, and then of course it didn't turn out well for President Lincoln either. So
anyway, yeah, it's a crazy week. In other news, let's start with the Democrats a little bit. So,
okay, all right.
There's a lot of fear that on the part of Democrats that are more traditionalists, less socialists, that Hillary Clinton is losing it big time.
All right.
And one of the signs of that is this week she announced she was going to be leaving Nevada before the primaries were fully over.
Wow, okay.
And the people on Morning Joe were talking about this the other night and about what a big shocker it is. I was hoping you could play that.
Now, is she leaving Nevada because she's so certain of victory that she doesn't have to spend any time there? Or
that would be what you would think. So she was leading Sanders by double digits.
Right.
She is now losing to Sanders in polling in Nevada.
Wow. All right. Now, is it Nevada or Nevada? How do you say it?
I say Nevada.
I pronounce it nuclear. Okay.
Nuclear.
Okay. Here we go. It's Morning Joe.
After we showed you a poll out of Nevada that has Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton virtually tied in that state, the Clinton camp announced.
Yeah, she said it wrong. It's supposed to be Nevada. People in Nevada say Nevada. They don't say Nevada.
Nevada.
So, okay, let's continue. Now, that's not her. That's the commentator. So here we go.
After we showed you a poll out of Nevada that has Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton virtually tied in that state, the Clinton camp announced an event in Houston, Texas, the night of the caucuses. The campaign says they believe.
Wow, that's not good at all. They're leaving Nevada before the
so they're going to get.
You said
they
it
say
right.
They're going to get the results before she leaves, before she takes off.
Wow. I don't know what's in Texas, but it must be a lot of money because it's just not good announcing that you're leaving a state before the.
They must be reading the tea leaves there.
Wow. That's is it not?
Well, I
shocking
think
what's
they were
happening?
reading the tea leaves. First, they were reading the tea leaves because she canceled a trip and stayed in Nevada and did 3 appearances when I think she was going to be going to Florida maybe 3 days ago. Look, they have known, they have had the feeling on the ground what we're seeing in these polls now.
You know,
in Nevada.
we justifiably concentrate a lot of our energy and attention on the Republican side of the race because it's very interesting, largely because of Donald Trump. This is a huge story.
No,
It's a huge story.
Sam Stein, it really is. I mean, Hillary Clinton went into New Hampshire and fought in New Hampshire when a lot of people said she shouldn't have, said she should have gone straight to South Carolina and Nevada. She ends up losing massively in New Hampshire after campaigning there.
Although
the
she didn't.
second she gets out of that, she finds out that she's fighting for her life in Nevada. So she races across the country and goes to Nevada. And now it looks like they're pulling up stakes. Actually, the night of the caucus, something that always suggests things are not going your way.
Wow.
So I noticed you said so she didn't.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people misunderstand the superdelegate thing.
Okay. Well, I certainly do, because when I saw this graph of the superdelegates for Hillary and the superdelegates for Bernie, it was like 300 to 1.
Sure, but that was the same thing that happened during when Obama was running too.
Right. Okay.
Hillary had a majority of them to start with,
right?
Because they glad hand everybody.
Well, I'm sorry.
Many years.
Bernie Sanders is not Barack Obama. You know,
What do you mean?
He's not.
Well, obviously, in the sense that they're 2 different people. But what do you mean as far as a politician? He's not as skilled? Is that what you're saying?
As far as the whole hope and change thing that Barack Obama brought with him?
We just went off the air.
Oh, we did? Well, we're on. Oh, that's because I did that. Sorry.
You just made me go off
there you go. Sorry. Okay, tell you what, we're up against a break. 721-1290. And we also have a sound bite. The drama continues between Ted Cruz and
that's right.
Donald Trump.
I do have another soundbite where Harry Reid defends the superdelegate process.
Really? Okay. So we're coming right back. Phone lines are open, 721-1290. We're coming right back. All right. We're back on Talkback. Thanks for joining us here on this Thursday, February 18th. We do have a caller on the line. who wants to visit with us. So let's do that right now. And let's get Mike on the line. Good morning, Mike.
Yeah, well, the reason I called yesterday and you ran out of time is because you have a problem with people saying nuclear or whatever. I have a real problem with learned people coming from this college and are supposed to be smarter than I am, referring to our nation as a democracy.
Yeah, I know.
It is well, I would correct them in a heartbeat.
It's a republic. It's a representative republic.
And that quote goes, and what have we got? And he says, Madam, we have a republic, if you can keep it. And if you insist on calling it a democracy, I don't think it's going to last as a republic. It lasts this long, but that is the one thing that drives me nuts is when you got people who got degrees all over there, and they have no idea what kind of government they're talking about.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. Okay, well, our guest has arrived. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get Dr. Joel Wallach in with us this morning. Dr. Wallach, how are you, sir? Oh, just grab that microphone right there.
Well, thank you so much. Always appreciate the hospitality.
You bet. Here. Get you up on that.
Okay, good.
All right, you got it. All right.
Okay.
That's a lot of stairs to climb, I got to tell you.
I feel like one of these little guys in a high chair.
That's how Peter feels when he's standing, so I wouldn't feel too bad.
Come on now. All right. I know I'm vertically challenged, but don't rub it in, okay? So, Dr. Wallach, where have you been now? You are about the most. You got the Ricky Nelson thing going. You're the traveling man. So, where did you come from recently?
Well, let's see here. I've been in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been in Victorville, California. I went on a 10-day cruise to Cayman Islands. That was cool.
Wow. Oh, poor boy.
Poor boy, yeah.
So sorry.
Did you open a nice little bank account there?
Of course.
Anyway, so now you are here to do another one of your wonderful seminars, right?
Absolutely, and here with Jerry and Vivian, and they just do great things for the people of Montana. I'm so proud to be here, and I just come and talk and leave, and they put everything on, so they're going to give me the information or give you the information.
Fantastic. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Dr. Wallach.
Okay.
So we're just a little bit late, so I want to just jump right into the subject matter here.
Well, first of all, Peter.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, you know this is the fourth anniversary.
Okay.
A very special event that took place.
Probably the first time you were on this show.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I want to talk to all the medical doctors.
And I believe, wasn't that the day that you got a threat that somebody was going to sue you?
No, they were going to kill me.
Oh, that's right. They were going to kill you.
Oh, that happens all the time.
I know. And so I want to pass on a message to these doctors. This guy was an anesthesiologist for a private surgical group here in town.
Right.
And he says, I'm Dr. So-and-so. And he says, I just want you to know, Wallach, if you come into our emergency room unconscious, you won't leave alive.
Wow.
And so, Doctor, I'm back.
And you're still hale and hearty as
Johnny.
ever. All right. So you're hale and hearty as ever.
Oh,
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of months I'll turn 76. And nobody's going to steal an airplane with me on it. I'll tell you that.
Sounds good. Yeah. Sounds good. So tell us a little bit about longevity and what you're doing here.
Sure. Well, the thing that makes me different is I do have a degree in agriculture. I'm a veterinarian. I'm a comparative pathologist where I do autopsies on animals and people. I love doing autopsies on doctors, right? And their average lifespan is only 56. So the character from 4 years ago, he might be dead already.
Oh, I hope not.
Well,
but go ahead. Yeah.
That's in the good Lord's hands, right?
Okay.
Unless they self-inflict themselves by doing drugs and, how doctors do. But anyway, and then I went back to school and became a naturopathic physician. I've been licensed as a naturopathic physician since 1978, and so I have the 4 degrees. So that makes me a little bit different. I'm not smarter than anybody else. I'm just a dumb farm boy from Missouri, but I do have some experience in training. And so even a dog, can have good training and do good things, and so I feel blessed. And the thing that motivates me to come and give these lectures all over the world, last year I did 400 lectures. On Saturdays and Sundays I do 2 or 3 sometimes. So
wow. That
brought up to 400 last year.
I thought I worked hard.
And people say, well, why do you spend so much time on the road all over the world, 50 countries, lecturing and putting on these seminars? And you gentlemen have both probably heard this, that experts are telling us that our children, the generation of our children, will be the first generation of Americans who do not live as long as their parents. I want you to think about it. Steve Jobs was buried by his parents when he was 56. Iwata from Nintendo was buried by his parents when he was 55. And then Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, he buried his son at age 46.
Right.
Former President Jimmy Carter buried his son, his grandson at age 28.
It's always a tragedy.
Yeah, now here we're talking about politically powerful people, wealthy people, and their kids are dying before them. So what's going on here?
We should be able to afford the finest medical care available.
Well,
right?
they do. That's their problem.
Okay.
That is truly their problem.
Okay.
Oh, that's the.
I walked right into that one.
There's
didn't
the
I?
loophole.
Okay,
right?
there's the loophole.
Okay.
And so the thing you have to appreciate is we're missing the basic needs of life. When you look at the top 20 longevity cultures, according to the National Geographic, they're all third world cultures. They have no doctors, no private insurance, no government insurance. They have no hospitals, clinics, emergency services, no roads, no cars, no utilities, no indoor plumbing, none of the things we think of as being essential to life.
No Nintendo. Yeah.
Exactly.
Tough life.
How can you live? And so they're barely scratching a living, and yet they have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. They have 100-year-old per 250 of their populations. We have 100-year-old per 10,000. So what's happening here? Well, it turns out we're not even getting the basics. We have plenty of food, but the food is valueless. Okay, plenty of calories, but the food in terms of what our genes and DNA and RNA require to maximize their genetic potential for making us healthy and live long are not there.
Tell you what, hang on to that thought. We're up against a break. We're going to come right back. By the way, would you like to take some calls from folks?
Well, sure.
Okay.
That's
so
the most fun.
Phone lines are open. If you'd like to visit with Dr. Joel Wallach, the author of Dead Doctors Don't Lie, maybe you got a question you'd like to ask him, we'll be right back. Again, our number is 721-1290. Hey, we're back on Talkback, 721-1290. Dr. Joel Wallach joining us here in studio. An abbreviated visit, unfortunately, because we have to take off at 9. But he's going to be in Hamilton tonight, 7 o'clock at the Bitterroot River Inn Conference Center. And he'll be here in Missoula on Saturday, February 20th at 7 p.m. at the Best Western on Grant Creek Road. So, there you go. Okay, now we just got into the whole idea of the fact that...
What's missing?
What's missing?
Okay, the short version of it is, Peter, that when Thomas Edison pulled the switch on the first commercial electric generating plant at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882 on Pearl Street, New York City,
wow,
it ended our life as we knew it because we switched from wood as a universal fuel throughout the world to electricity. Within 10 years of that event, every town, every city in the industrialized world converted from wood as a universal fuel to electricity. Well, we'd been using wood ashes as a fertilizer in our gardens and our field. Well, wood ashes aren't ashes. Wood ashes are 95%, 98% minerals. We were getting our nutritional minerals unknowingly by eating food that was fertilized with wood ashes. When we switched to electricity, all those minerals went away. And it's been a downward spiral in our health ever since.
So now they're just dumping a bunch of chemicals in the ground.
Well, and we're only getting 3 nutrients because that's what farmers need to get maximum yields.
Right.
And they're not going to put in all the minerals and vitamins in the food and in the soil because then you'd have to pay $20 for a loaf of bread, and they're not going to do that.
Right.
So they only put in NPK, get nice products, but there's no nutrition in them for us. In livestock, we know this. Remember, I'm a veterinarian and a physician. In veterinary medicine, we put all the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids, into the animal's alfalfa pellets or mixed grains so that we make up the difference because it's not in the food anymore, so we have to consciously put it in there.
That's why you never see a cow in the ER.
That's right. We eat them if they get sick.
Right.
So don't get sick on my watch.
This is Montana, of course, right? There's lots of game out there, lots of meat eaters in Montana, carnivorous state, I suppose. The deer are really healthy. They eat all Peter's flowers, for crying out loud.
Right, yeah.
Why won't I be able to get those minerals just from eating meat?
Well, you'll get some, okay, but you're going to have to eat the bones and the cartilage and the tendons and the ligaments and the skin and the liver and the eyes and the tongue and all that kind of stuff to get everything you need. Because in the
don't
meat
be
alone,
selective eaters.
Yeah, you can't be selective eaters. And this is where the mountain lions and the bears do good because they eat the liver and the skin and the bones and the cartilage and the tendons. And so they're getting all these various nutrients which are required for these different tissues. If you just selectively pick one tissue, okay, just muscle alone, you're actually going to throw your phosphorus-calcium ratio off, and you'll wind up with osteoporosis and arthritis and kidney stones and all this kind of stuff if you just eat meat.
Okay, here's where we're at right now. We have to go. So what I'm going to do is invite folks to come to Hamilton tonight at the Bitterroot River Inn, 7 o'clock, on Saturday at the Best Western Grant Creek Inn at 7 o'clock on Saturday night to see Dr. Joel Wallach, author of Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And is there a charge?
Is there a charge? I think it's
Is there
free.
a charge? Free, free, free.
It's
That's
free.
what we like. Free,
I
free,
can't
free.
make it any cheaper than free.
It's always a pleasure. I'm sorry that our
Thank you, sir.
visit was abbreviated, but we sure appreciate you being with us.
That's okay. Just want to let the doctors know I'm back.
We will be back after this. Welcome, everybody. It is hour number 2 of Talkback, brought to you this morning in part by Bullseye Wear, where they offer some of the lowest prices in town on contact lenses. See Lynette at 2910 South Reserve. Nissan and Hyundai of Missoula under new management, offering rebates, discounts, at 0% financing on a huge selection of inventory. Located on Brooks near Southgate Mall, and by Selway Armory on Stockyard Road. More guns and ammo than anyone in Missoula and the best prices in Montana. They are Montana's premier firearms dealer. Well, a tough act to follow means we got to bring in the heavy guns.
That's
right. We spoke with Dr. Joel Wallach for a few precious minutes just in the last hour. But we have our monthly visit with Superintendent Mark Thane from School District 1. Mark, always a pleasure, sir. How are you?
Well, thank you. I'm well. I appreciate the opportunity to come chat with you this morning.
And I know we probably don't need to say this, but just so everyone knows, because sometimes we get the same callers over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But this is an open phones program.
Right.
So if you have a child or an experience in your local school and you have questions, you want to know why things or how things are working, give us a call. You can speak with the superintendent of Missoula Public School District 1, Mark Thane, right now. The phone number is 721-1290. That's 721-1290.
Now, I did ask Superintendent Thane if there's anything he didn't want to talk about. He went, what?
I didn't know that I had the option, quite honestly.
So
I'll be prepared next time.
Whatever's on your mind, if you've got a question or a comment, maybe an attaboy or a criticism or whatever it might be. I'm sure you love the attaboys.
Constructive criticism.
Yeah, there you go. Constructive criticism is always good. Now, if you don't mind, I want to just go back to something that made the headlines again. It was the Hellgate data breach. And I had thought, ignorant soul that I am, that was all taken care of because you had the news conference, you let everybody know what happened and the things you did to take care of it. And I understand it popped up again when an unfortunate event happened.
Sure.
So what happened there?
Well, a couple things, Peter. First of all, back in December when the breach was discovered, we did notify all parents that the breach had occurred, and we did that via Connect 5, and that was to all the parents of current Hellgate High School students. What happened, there were 16 documents that were attached to the email that was addressed to the football parents. And there were a couple of documents that actually, if you were to look at them as they were released, the print was basically microscopic. But if you took the time to enlarge it, there were actually some successive sheets that you could open. And we discovered number one, that one of the things we wanted to do was identify each of the parents and students who were impacted by mail and to actually show them exactly what data was released, which was not required by statute, but we felt an obligation to do that. So as we identified each of those individual records and went back to address them to the students, and there were 1,100, we discovered that there were actually some students who were no longer in our system. They were graduates. And there was some data from the 2012-13, 13-14, and 14-15 years in a document called a Swiss document. Largely that was attendance data. There were some office discipline referrals there. So at the time we reached about mid-January, we had all 1,100 of those letters ready. They went out, and that was the first time some of those media outlets in particular came to understand that it impacted some former students. So that's why it came back to the headlines.
This may be a cheesy question, but why do you call it the Swiss document?
That's an acronym that I wish I could tell you what it stands for. You caught me off guard.
That's all right.
But at any rate, it's a tracking method we use, and essentially it allows us to analyze data so that we can see if, for example, we have patterns to attendance, absences and tardies, and we can identify, fifth period's a particular problem. Maybe it's somebody not getting back from lunch on time. If it's discipline referrals, we can look at the location, and we might say, the third floor hallway is a place where we're having lots of discipline referrals, so how might we address supervision there? So
It's like a meta-analysis of
Essentially
tardies.
it is.
Like, John just seems to be tardy every morning. Maybe he's waking up too late. And
we're going to give him the wake-up call.
So I did have a question for you. It's something that kind of goes along with this. You had mentioned that some students that had already graduated were in this data. How long does the school system keep information on us after we leave?
I had a feeling that might be one of your questions today. I happen to bring
All right.
with me today.
He's going to read it aloud. John, you got F's in biology.
Well, actually, no. One of the media outlets earlier this week said or asserted that our board policy was not in alignment with state statute regarding the retention of records. We're actually governed by Schedule 7 of the Montana Local Government Retention and Disposition Schedule. And the question that was raised in that media outlet was why certain records were retained for a period of 8 years. And if you actually go through this document, it identifies those specific records. For example, any records of student class schedules have to be retained by statute for 8 years. If you have any achievement test data, the actual achievement tests themselves are retained permanently, but intelligence tests, aptitude tests, interest inventories, and personality tests must be retained for 8 years after the student graduates or leaves the school district.
Now, is there any reason you as an administrator, could you go back to whoever's on that legislative committee and say why 8 years? Why not 5 years? Why not 3 years? I mean, they're out of the system. What's going on?
Sure. I suspect, and again, this is only speculation on my part, but there are a lot of students who may transition to post-secondary and possibly the military, and those records might be requested by those agencies. They're only released if they have consent of the adult student at that point in time. So these records we actually archive in a paper file that's stored in a basement vault at the administration building.
I was expecting you to say on Funk and Wagnall's porch.
There you go. We actually go back through those records, and right now a project that's been undertaken is we have someone in our office who's going through records that date back to the 1920s and 30s and making sure that even those old files have been cleaned out and complied with.
If you go back another 20 years, you might get information on Peter, too.
We may.
A little bit closer to the microphone
Okay.
there. All right.
I have a question for you, though. So if they're only paper files, how did they get leaked electronically?
No, and that's a good question. Those files that we're speaking about in terms of the data breach were electronic files. And, of course, electronic files are a relatively new advent for us. But when it gets to the permanent files and permanent record retention, we'll actually print out copies that would go into student files for records retention purposes. The data that was released was actually stored on a desktop by an administrator who was looking for ready access to data as she worked with students in the course of her dispatch and normal duties. So that was a bit of an anomaly. We're looking at policies and procedures and reworking kind of the best practice documents so that we can have our administrative team manage those records differently.
Okay.
Part of our learning curve.
Okay. Mark Thane joining us here in studio. He, of course, is the superintendent of School District 1. If you have a question or comment, lines are open at 721-1290. He'll be with us till 10 o'clock this morning, so don't waste it. Or we'd have to make you stand in the corner for a few minutes. Or at least in detention. We'll be right back. All right, the smooth sound of Mark Thane right there, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I'm sorry. Earth, Wind, and Fire. Just kidding. All right, Mark Thane is joining us here at studio this morning, superintendent of School District 1, and I'm glad he has a sense of humor. All right, let's get Jeannie on the line. Jeannie, you're on with Mark Thane. Go ahead.
Good morning, Jeannie.
Hi, yeah. I would like to address the elephant in the room.
Me again, another fat joke? Come on.
Well, it's a big elephant. But anyway, it's the issue of closed schools. And I don't believe this issue was addressed adequately with the bond. But I did hear on the radio a few minutes ago that the university was celebrating its charter date.
123 years.
Yes. And anyway, the university was founded in 1893, so congratulations to the university. And I would like to point out that there is another Missoula school near and dear to the hearts of many Missoulians that shares the same founding date of 1893, and that is Prescott School. And the actual founding date of that school is 1891, if you consider the first location. So anyway, so Prescott has been the site of many celebrations, but however, it was part of a tragic closure decision in 2004.
So what's your question, Jeannie?
And my question is, as a person who has grown up in Missoula, attending Missoula's smaller neighborhood schools, which I believe are superior to our larger schools, and as I understand Mark Thane did, I'm wondering if he has an interest in advocating for the reopening of these closed neighborhood schools, one or maybe two at which he had taught. And I would like to, again, bring up a great study. It's called Dollars and Cents, the Cost Effectiveness of Small Schools. And I hope that he'll get on the bandwagon and start advocating for these schools in his hometown.
All right,
Thank
Gina,
you.
thanks for the call. Appreciate that. Well, she's nothing if not consistent.
There you go.
So go ahead, Mark, if you would address that.
Again, this is an issue we have discussed previously. I think there are two schools in particular that Jeannie would likely recognize, one being Mount Jumbo out in East Missoula and the other being the Prescott School. Mount Jumbo School actually is a wonderful facility. We will use it next year as a swing space. The students from Lowell will actually attend Mount Jumbo. And I would love to see the opportunity to reopen Mount Jumbo. Right now, we have about 150 students, K-8, that live in the East Missoula area. That's not quite enough to sustain a facility, and I'm encouraged by the growth we're seeing. There's a new apartment complex that's opening out in East Missoula, and I think it's prime for redevelopment. And I would love to see the day when we reopen Mount Jumbo. Unfortunately, the situation with Prescott is such that, number one, it is very small. Its capacity is really limited. And it suffers from some age-related issues. There's significant...
What are you looking at me for?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, significant deferred
subtle.
maintenance. Before we could get into Prescott,
holes in the roof up here. Yeah.
Literally millions of dollars. Roofing, boilers, heat distribution systems, in addition to just the state of repair. So much like the Lincoln School that also served the Rattlesnake area, the classrooms are small. The facility itself is small. In fact, at the time Prescott closed, it did not have a library. The library was out in the hallways. I believe that it had a total of 8 classrooms. So.
Well, I remember Lincoln School because our church was in Lincoln School for many years. And you want to talk about an inconvenient building. You walk in, you've got to go up steps to get in, and you go up steps and down steps to get to anywhere. And there's no way to make it ADA compatible unless you tear it down and start all over again.
Sure, and Prescott has ADA
that was Lincoln
issues
School.
with the second floor as well as gym access. So it would require either some significant ramping or elevator service also to make it compliant.
So that's the name of that tune. So let's get...
Jeannie has a response.
Well, you know what? Jeannie, you've had your shot, okay? I'm sorry. We do this every month. So next month, try it again. Let's get Russell on the line. He's waiting. Russell, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Hi. See, I was just wondering, I mean, there's a lot of talk now about graduation matters, and then there's also a lot of talk about, skills gap and employment and stuff. And what I'm wondering is, I know we have the great facility where the FFA place is, and I'm just wondering if there's, and I really don't know, where we're at with this, but as far as some of the kids that are probably not going to go to college, how many things are offered as far as woodworking, welding, plumbing, electrical, some of the stuff that I know you have your state guidelines, but I'm just wondering if there's much thought of trying to bring some of that up, some of those as electives that maybe some of the kids would actually have, more skills and be better prepared, and then maybe some of the kids that might otherwise drop out that would be interested in some of those things might, stay in because of those things. And I'm just wondering if there's much thought given to that avenue.
Interesting you would say that, because I'm going to show my age again, but when I was in high school, there was shop class, there was, home economics class, there was all sorts of things that weren't necessarily academically related, but you learn a lot of stuff in it, right? Like drafting and, all that good stuff.
Sure, and largely those classes exist today, although many of them have changed. So, Russell, there are a couple things I would say. With regard to graduation matters, and I think what you'd find in the literature nationally is that not only do we want career and technical ed courses, but we want all our graduates to be both college and career ready. So we don't want to track and say that a student's headed only to vocational or only to post-secondary, but we want them to have options at the time they graduate. So in terms of, first, the VOAG Center, we are doing some extensive work at the VOAG Center, and that's really a growing program for us. We have students from all three of the urban high schools as well as the Willard Alternative High School program that take classes out at the VOAG Center. We actually run an inter-district shuttle bus so that kids can access those programs. In addition to the traditional programs, we have some pre-veterinary track there, so again, addressing both the college and the career readiness aspects. We have a number of other programs, although you might see the traditional industrial arts or shop classes reconfigured some today. Technology impacts that significantly. So when we talk about STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, there's an integration of those disciplines, and we're looking at a lot of pre-engineering. We're actually looking at a pre-engineering academy structure at Sentinel High School that would involve some of that traditional industrial arts. We have, last night I met with the Hellgate High School Finance Academy, where students can take a concentration of courses in the business fields, and they can prepare themselves for either the workplace or post-secondary. And finally, I see we're getting ready for a break here. We have the Health Science Academy at Big Sky High School, which brings those health science disciplines together, and those students actually have an opportunity to come out with a CNA certification, phlebotomy, et cetera, while they're in high school. Additionally, we're working with the Missoula College, and students that are involved in a number of these programs have a clearly defined 6-year pathway. So it's a schedule of high school courses that feed directly into the Missoula College programs, and those students then take less time and fewer credits at Missoula College in order to accrue the credits necessary for their certifications. They also get the advantage of earning credit for those classes in high school that are actually reflected on their college transcript, so it saves them a lot of money too. So this is an area we're very active in. I would just finish by saying 10:15 today, I'm meeting with a state legislator from Billings named Don Jones, who's actually coming through town. His focus of his conversation today is career and technical ed, and he's proposing legislation to enhance funding in that area so that we can make those programs increasingly robust. So.
Okay, we're going to be right back. All three lines open, by the way, 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. Mark Thane joining us. He's the superintendent of School District 1, and we would love to have your phone calls and questions when we return. All right, we're back on Talkback, 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. I'd love to have your phone calls this morning. Speaking, now you just mentioned a minute ago, we're going to get a phone call here in just a second, Willard Alternative School. There was a little bit of a dust-up over an article that came out in the Willard, what they call the Willard Wire, and I wanted to ask you, I understand that there was some disciplinary action that was taken. First of all, tell me about, for those that didn't ever read the article, what was it about, and what was the objection from the administration as far as the content of what happened there?
The article actually was well written, well researched. It was on a national movement called Free the Nipple, and it was about kind of desensitizing the public with regard to female press. The student journalists made a decision to run a front page photo that had some women and one male who were topless, and the nipples were blurred out. On one of the interior pages, there was a photo of a topless female. The other thing that I guess I had greatest concern about, there was some very vulgar reference to a sex act in one of the pieces of narrative. So when the paper hit, we made a decision to call it back and do a little investigation and see exactly how that all transpired. We have board policy that governs student publications. They're technically a closed forum, and that's been supported by a Supreme Court decision.
So it's not a freedom of speech issue.
No, and they are considered an extension of the curriculum. And we have a responsibility, I believe, as a school district to teach to professional standards, et cetera. And I think that you would be hard-pressed to find any mainstream media who would have run either of those, the photos or
Well, I saw
the
photos
narrative.
of the photo
and
on
a
many
couple of them-
mainstream media sites, actually.
Yeah, and
But they were-
I don't know
but
how
they were blacked
mainstream
out.
they are, but
Well, the originals were blurred, Peter.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
Quid pro quo.
at any rate, we have an audience of 14 to 18-year-old high school students.
Sure.
The paper and the curriculum and the advisor are all supported with tax dollars, and we feel a responsibility then to step in this situation. And I don't fault the students. I think they really believed that they had a cause that they wanted to call to the public's attention. I think we as adults had a responsibility to talk to the students about how to do that appropriately. I did go out and meet for about 90 minutes with the journalism class at Willard and just did a question and answer. I don't know that I changed any minds, but I wanted them to understand that I certainly respected the fact that they were asserting themselves and that they felt strongly about the issue, but that we had a responsibility to our public and to our taxpayers, and as educators have a responsibility to help them to understand the professional ethics and standards that came into play.
So as far as the check and balance here, obviously the students did this, but there was some administrator, I assume, in charge of the students, right? So what happens? Are you changing any of the procedures on that end going forward, or?
I don't think that's actually necessary. I think our policies are real clear. It's making sure that people understand their responsibility to exercise that judgment. So.
Yeah, we're going to take a little break. Rose, we're going to get your call on in a moment. We have two lines open. It's 721-1290. And Mark Thane joining us here in studio. Superintendent of School District 1, willing to take your calls and your questions. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is the number. John King's right there. I'm Peter Christian. Joining us in studio, Mark Thane, Superintendent of School District 1. So let's get Rose on the line. Rose, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Thane.
Good morning, Rose.
Hi. I have a son that's going to be a freshman next year at Hellgate High School, and he's very excited about playing football. And as parents, we've been active with all the meetings and everything that's going on to make changes. And I do have to say, I think you've made a lot of positive changes for the football program there so far with the administration and the changes that you've done. And I just want to thank you for that because I think it will help the program futuristically.
Thank you.
As of now, I'm wondering, I know we're in the process of hiring a coach, and wondering if that's been done, and what if we're going to be able to have a varsity team.
Okay, so what's the deal with? I've been meaning to ask about that too. What's the deal with Hellgate football?
Well, those are excellent questions. So we did post the head coach position and have actually screened, interviewed, and extended an offer to a candidate. One of the difficulties that we have right now is that most of those candidates would also like teaching positions. And, of course, it's a separate process because you hire teachers separately from the coaches. And we actually have a time frame that's spelled out in our collective bargaining agreements because those current teachers within the district have a transfer right before any of those positions are posted to the outside. So we're essentially in limbo right now. We've got a candidate that we think a lot of, and we're hoping for the best. We've extended an offer. He needs to explore his options with regard to teaching positions before he makes a commitment.
Is it? It seems to me when I was younger that most of the sports coaches, et cetera, were also teachers at the same school, and that they were often hired in tandem because of that ability to cross-pollinate, I guess you could say. Is that changed since I was a kid?
It has. All of the head coaches are not necessarily teachers. We have some very successful programs, and in fact, I could cite two at Hellgate where the head coach is not a teacher. Anders Brooker is a local businessman who is the cross-country coach, has 115 students running cross-country at Hellgate. Excellent program. Jay Anderson's the soccer coach, and they're state champions for the boys at Hellgate. But we're in a situation here where we're looking to rebuild a program, and you really need to have an evangelist who can recruit the athletes back to the football program. So
Now,
we
for
would
those that don't know, Hellgate has had a really tough time, especially with varsity football, for how many years now?
It's been a number. It's been a decade or more.
Yeah.
So we would like to, if at all possible, have somebody in the building who can develop those relationships and connections with the students. We think that would help resurrect the program. But obviously, we're going to hire the best candidate based on their skills and attributes. So we've extended an offer. It does so happen that this is a coach at another high school who is a teacher, and certainly I understand his desire to remain a teacher in addition to coaching. So
would he be able to teach at the other school and coach for you?
That would be a possibility.
Okay.
So I suspect as we get into the spring, he'll look for jobs in the area. If that works out, then I think we'll have a coach.
A question from Susie on Facebook. She wants to say, will there be any more administrative personnel changes at Hellgate High School, perhaps for the 2016-2017 school year?
It's a little premature, but I'll tell you what's happening right now. We have two of the executive regional directors who are leaving us. Roberta Stangel's returning to retirement, and Trevor Lebowski's taking a leave of absence and is going to Kuala Lumpur to lead international school. So that's created two openings. So right now we have posted to our current administrators an opportunity to request transfer. I will actually late this afternoon respond to those requests. That could create some additional building openings. We already have a retirement at Paxson. Kelly Chumrow's leaving us. And so we know we have one principal vacancy. We'll see what internal shuffles happen and whether or not that creates additional vacancies.
What happened to the water at Hellgate? It's just like everything seems to be piling on there, doesn't it?
Sometimes it goes in cycles.
I did want to ask you a question, and yes, it has partially to do with Hellgate.
I'm a Hellgate alum, This is near and dear to my heart.
But we talked about it a little bit off the air, but I thought it was a good response for maybe the listeners out there to hear. After the whole kerfuffle with the information being sent out by the administrator, what safeguards or changes in procedure have gone into place to make sure that that doesn't happen again when it comes to people's grades, their attendance, their ACTs, and all that stuff?
Well, a couple things. First of all, student data is maintained in a password-protected student management system. What we found with regard to the data breach is just for ease of access, the administrator had created some reports and drawn that data, downloaded it to a document, and then saved it on that individual computer desktop. That's not a best practice. All sensitive student data should be saved on what we call our H drive, which is a secure password-protected hard drive that we maintain at the district level. So we've gone back and looked at all our policies and procedures associated with technology. Technology continues to evolve. We need to make sure our policies and procedures stay current. And then it's a matter of some professional development with our staff saying, essentially, here are the data sets you can access, and here's how you need to treat them and how you should be saving them. We actually scheduled two-day trainings for all administrators on FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, that we'll be conducting the first part of April to, again, just reinforce the message. We don't want people to be paranoid about using data. If we're going to positively impact students, we need to be able to get to that individual data level and help students and family plan what their next right steps are. But by the same token, we have a responsibility to treat that very, very carefully. And so it is important for us to review those procedures and make sure that we do implement best practice.
I think it's important, too, to note that we had discussed this off air, that so far, or at least from this particular data breach, there's been no official legal action, or parents have been very good about understanding and accepting and saying, okay, let's move on from here.
Sure. It's a tough situation. And as a parent, I can appreciate how challenging it would have been if my own students' data were to have been involved in the breach. And so, we owe a sincere apology to everybody that was impacted, students and families alike. By the same token, I think we have an obligation then to go back and to review our policies and make sure that we're doing everything to earn the trust of the students and the families with regard to our protection of that data, and we'll continue to do that. This is a tremendously unfortunate circumstance. I think we learned a lot from it. We did self-report to the U.S. Department of Education, and I actually have heard back from them via conference call. And they actually have lauded our efforts in terms of going back and doing all the individual notifications, et cetera. It's my understanding under FERPA that there is not cause for legal action that would result in any kind of monetary damages. The only case that would cause that to happen is if, in fact, the Family Compliance Office came back and made specific recommendations to us and we chose to ignore them, then penalties come into play. There was some question early on whether or not there might have been some HIPAA violations with regard to health information, but the review of the data basically says that no HIPAA violations occurred. So that would have been the area where there might have been potential.
I love the acronyms you guys work with, SWIS and FERPA. I'd love to be the guy to come up with that.
I apologize for that education.
FERPA and HIPAA.
According to the Blorg statute of 1882, we're not allowed to talk about this anymore.
We'll be right back ASAP. So hang on, TFF. Hey, we're back. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309. Now we do have a Facebook question.
Allison says, "Greetings, Earthlings." No, she didn't actually add that in there.
Okay.
I was listening online with half of my attention to the MCPS superintendent. He mentioned something about high school students graduating with a CNA certification. Which high school offers the program? Where can I find out more information? Thank you.
That's conferred through the Big Sky High School Health Sciences Academy, and they actually received a $50,000 grant this year from St. Patrick Hospital in order to help facilitate those certification programs. So students that work through that program have opportunities for healthcare certifications in addition to job shadow and internship opportunities.
In case you're wondering, CNA stands for Certified Nursing Assistant.
Thank you. Another one of those acronyms.
According to the Blorg statutes of 1982, we're not allowed to have any more acronyms. Let's see. One of the other things that I wanted to ask you about is my. I guess this is my Jeannie Jocelyn kind of. Shouldn't have used your last name. I apologize. My repetitive question for you: are we anywhere further on Cold Springs? Do we have any more decisions anywhere?
I am cautiously optimistic. We employed a commercial realtor to do some negotiating on a piece of property for us. He's had favorable responses from the owners of the property. We're waiting and understand that it's likely they'll shoot a price our way this week, and then we'll enter into the negotiations phase if everything looks good. So, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx us, but we're making progress. And
could you share where this is at, or is that sensitive right now?
Well, we're looking we have identified two different sites in the lower Miller Creek area, and it's one of those two properties. And, right. It's a well-situated property. There are a lot of biking, walking trails that feed down into that area, and bikeability, walkability has been an issue for us because virtually all Cold Spring students are transported to school right now because of its location. So I'm hoping in the coming weeks we'll have some significant progress there and be able to go to the board, hopefully with a request to enter into a buy-sell.
Let me ask you about how this works. Well, obviously, schools are in neighborhoods, obviously, they're surrounded by homes. What kind of input do you get from the neighbors in an area where you want to put a school? Do you canvass them first? Do you ask them, how would you feel about a new school going in here? Or we're just going to plop it in here and you're going to have to live with it?
Buyer beware.
Yeah.
Actually, we recently had a meeting with the city planning office and invited a number of our architects and engineers that are engaged with our school projects because of that very concern. We will have an obligation to have a public meeting and to notice all those that live within a certain distance of any properties that we intend to either expand or consider for construction. So we'll go through a public process before we get to any of the identification of code issues or zoning issues that might be attendant to any property we look at. One of the things that I found interesting is if, in fact, we, through any of these projects, increase the footprint of a facility by more than 5%, we're obligated to go through that process. So we've had a number of public meetings with regard to the bond projects, but I recognize that there will be people that have specific interest in their neighborhoods and neighborhood schools, and we will engage them in a public way.
Interesting. So if this plan goes through, I assume that we'll be in the position where the children will still go to Cold Springs until the new site is developed.
That would be a great advantage for us. We wouldn't need to dislocate them or do anything with swing space for a year. They could stay at Cold Spring for another year.
Because they have 3 playgrounds at Cold Springs, which I've heard is about the coolest thing in the world.
There you go. Well, one of the things we conceive is that we would like to identify about an 8-acre site. So not only would we have room for the footprint of a school and certainly for playgrounds, but also some off-street parking, which of course is a premium at Cold Springs presently.
Can you guarantee to my daughter there will be 3 playgrounds at the new facility?
Can't guarantee 3. Maybe a good large one though.
Okay.
But you must have tetherball.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
If you get a protester up front of your date that happens to look like she's 8 years old,
perfect.
We're going to come right back. We have a quick break. All 3 lines open. Mark Thane only going to be with us for another 6 or 7 minutes. If you have a question or a praise or a problem or whatever it might be, give us a call at 721-1290. Okay, here we are on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. Okay, is it Craig or Sue's on line 1? Sue's on line 1. All right, let's get to Sue. Good morning. You're on line 1. Hi.
Hi, Peter.
What's up?
Well, I sent a question in on Facebook, but I wanted to ask Mark. I really am hoping that they do Hellgate returns back to the senior capstone. I don't really understand why it went away, but it was one of the best things about Hellgate, and they had a plan to have it start in the winter semester of a junior year and finish in the fall semester of senior year. And I don't know whatever happened to that, but I took my kids, both of them when they were in middle school, to capstone presentations at Hellgate. It was the best thing, and it just kills me that they don't do it anymore, and they made it optional. And I just want Mr. Thane to address that.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. The capstone projects, I think, were wildly successful at Hellgate. I, too, attended capstone presentations and really enjoyed them. And I do think that's a great way for students to demonstrate really a synthesis of the 4 years of learning that they've had at the high school level. So I agree with you in that regard. Part of the issue with capstone was there were conversations about whether or not capstone should be unique to individual high schools or whether it should be a district-wide graduation requirement. And that's where it got hung up into whether or not it should be required of all students or whether it should be optional. So the present situation is that capstone is optional. Both Hellgate and Big Sky do have capstone projects and still go through the presentation, although they have not required it for graduation. So it's something that will be visited. We actually have it as part of our Achievement for All plan that we would go back and assess capstone and make a determination.
Is that what they used to call senior project?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the distinction I would make there with capstone is the transition from a senior project being just anything that might be of an interest to the student to a capstone, which really is intended to be a synthesis to demonstrate the learning that they've focused on over the course of their high school years.
In your case, it might be all the doodles in your notebook or
pretty much
all the interesting voices you can make.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, which would be tremendously entertaining for about 15 seconds. All right, Sally, good morning. You're on Talkback with Mark Thane. Hi.
Hi, Mark. This is Sally Doyle, and I live right next to Cold Springs.
Hi, Sally.
And I'm wondering, if you have any more information about what will happen to the property once the school is built in the Lower Miller Creek.
Actually, we have not had that conversation yet at the board level. We will take a look at all the properties the district holds as we get to probably the late part of this spring. The decision that the board will have to make is whether or not to retain some of those properties for future district use, or whether it might be an appropriate time to consider selling some of those assets to help fund and the projects that we're undertaking and reduce the taxpayer burden. So we have identified a number of those properties that we hold. We haven't had specific discussion about Cold Springs because the prospect still exists that we could rebuild on that site if something doesn't develop with regard to the alternative sites we've identified. But late spring, I think we'll enter into that conversation.
So not nuclear silo. That's not
no.
On the, okay.
That's not planned for the neighborhood.
And you're not extending the Walmart parking lot.
That, we certainly are not.
Thanks, Sally. Okay, Lucy, you're on Talkback with Mark Thane. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello, Lucy. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
There was a news clip on one of the TV stations that we were watching one night. It was showed how young, really very young kids can get on the Internet and order drugs like Scooby-Doo. And it showed a picture of this packet that just looked like a candy envelope or something. And it was so interesting and so informative that I thought to myself, I would like to hear that again or have a program or something on that because it showed, and I wish I knew what channel it was on, but it showed pictures of these children with like laying down and in a spasm like.
Hey, okay. Lucy, do you have a question for Mr. Thane?
Well, no.
Okay, all right. Well, tell
but
you what.
It has to do with kids in school.
Gotcha.
And
gotcha.
the very, very, very young.
Okay.
Is there any way that you could talk about that?
Well, we'll ask him. Unfortunately, we're running really short of time. So is there anything?
I would just say that we do, as part of our health enhancement classes, talk specifically about drug and alcohol issues and awareness. And certainly the availability of synthetics on the Internet is a concern for the entire community, not just the school community.
You bet. All right. I think one of them was called Spice.
Yep.
Right. Some other things, too. So,
Scooby-Doos.
All right. Pat, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi, good morning. How are you, Mr. Thane? It's Pat Malone. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Pat?
We got about a minute and a half, Pat, so quickly.
Okay, very quick. As a parent who intentionally purchased a house within walking distance of Cold Spring School, I would much prefer seeing the school stay right where it's at. How do I address that to the district?
You could do that one of two ways, Pat. You could
I think
either
you just did.
Yeah, there you go. If you want to formalize that, you could certainly send a letter to the trustees. They do include correspondence in the board packets every month, or at each board meeting we do have public comment, and you'd be welcome to express that comment there also. So,
all right,
and I suspect there may be others that hold those feelings. I know that it's an important issue when we talk about where we locate those schools.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes. Real quick question, though. If you relocate the school, are you going to look into, or will the city look into, expanding some right-of-ways the city may have for walking paths to that school?
30 seconds.
I suspect that would be a conversation we'd entertain with the city. A number of these projects, there will be parking issues, sidewalk issues, et cetera, and we will try and collaborate with them so that we do create
because I live over there, not a lot of sidewalks, not a lot of walking paths.
How about some contact information for your office, Mark?
If at any time you want to reach me, you can go to the Missoula County Public Schools website, which is mcpsmt.org, and it has contact links there, or you can call my office, 728-2400.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, sir. Open phones tomorrow?
That's right. Chaos continues.
All right. You guys have a great day, and stay out of the rain, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.